Right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the Full Scoop. This time talking about the 11 EXA outcomes. I'm Alison Lawless, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you. There are already 160 logged in. We had almost 400 registrations, so I imagine the numbers will still go up. As you know, SASI Professional Development and Projects is really focused on helping young people work towards registration. So it's an absolute privilege for Patti and I to be involved with the Joburg branch this evening on hosting the next Full Scoop. Somebody says they can't hear anything. Can people hear? You yes, can hear. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so to start the ball rolling, I'm going to call on Zinat Gur, who is the chair of the Joburg branch. This is a Joburg branch event to welcome you all this evening in our journey on the road to registration. Zinat, over to you.
Hi, Alison. Thank you for that. And thank you for spending time with us this evening to take us through our session for today. And thank you to all of you 177 people that have logged on and counting. We're 178. It's nice to see that so many of you have logged on and so many of you have registered for this event this evening, talking about the 11 outcomes and a practical guide of how to achieve those 11 outcomes. I think registration is something that really becomes the next step in your journey once you graduate and once you find your feet in the working environment. So I think it's great that you all that have logged on have recognized that, because that is really what tonight's discussion is about. I also just want you to be mindful of one thing. Obviously, registration is really important to us in terms of getting our PRN number, and it's an exciting next step. But what we do is, as students and as people, we set ourselves targets and then we hold ourselves accountable to those targets. But I also want you to just be mindful of enjoying the journey in terms of getting to registration. For 12 years, you went to school, then for the next 4 years, you went to university to get a graduation as a civil technician or technologist or a civil engineer. And I just want you to enjoy that, because it is quite an achievement and it has taken you a long time to get there. And don't necessarily set yourself targets to you have to achieve registration within a certain amount of time and then be disappointed when you don't achieve it, because getting to registration means that you're getting to a point where you take responsibility and you are accountable to the decisions that you make. And it's an exciting place to be, but you need to be ready for it. So don't make yourself crazy trying to achieve an objective that's unrealistic, and set yourself targets to say, okay, by this year I need to achieve this, by this year I need to achieve that. And we'll go through it in terms of the 11 outcomes. And get yourself a mentor, get yourself a peer buddy that's going to do the process with you, because it is a difficult one. It's a very admin intensive one, and it needs to speak to what you've achieved in the years that you've been working. So just be mindful of that it's not really just an objective to achieve a PR number. It's also an objective to get to a point of being professional and accountable and taking on the risks and managing your risks. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over back to Alison to take us through this exciting evening and an evening full of learning. So please have your pens ready, make notes, and good luck with your registration. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Zinat. Absolutely. It's a next step in your career. It's a long journey. It's not the last step, though. You've got further ones. You'll work towards being specialists or team leaders or technical managers. So this is just the first step in a long, long journey. But of interest, though, I'm sure we've got a mix of people here tonight. Some younger people who are on that journey, 2, 3, 4 years out of university. Maybe we've even got students. But then there are people I know who are attending who have been working for 10 or 20 years, and they've also realized the need to register, because in March of this year, EXA published finally a definition of engineering work. This was in the first act that was published in 1968 to say that engineering work may only be performed by registered professionals, and it's taken whatever it is, 650 so many years to finally define engineering work. which is applying engineering and scientific principles, concepts, contextual and engineering knowledge in research, planning, design, implementation, management of work in the natural and the built environment. So this means that many of you who are in senior positions from March 2024, you need to be registered. So the matures who might have come along to listen and think, well, I've got plenty of time, that clock is now ticking, and we hope to see you all working towards registration in the next 3 years, or actually it's down to 2.5 years now. Our first speaker this evening is Rachel Mandaza. Rachel is a professional engineer with years of experience in consulting, but recently she's joined MISA, which is the Municipal Infrastructure Support Agent, where she's offering technical support to local government. Rachel has had huge experience in the water sector across the board: bulk, reticulation, master planning, stormwater modeling, dam safety, irrigation, you name it. So she's got a wonderful mix of experience. She has her civil engineering degree, of course, but also a master's in project management, an honors in water resource management, and the last few years, she has served as an ex-assessor, reviewer, moderator, passionate about registration. So she's really, really equipped to share her ideas with you on how to achieve the 11 EXA outcomes, really thinking about the engineering requirements, the complexity, and so on. So I'm now going to hand over to Rachel and ask her to talk to you about achieving those 11 outcomes, which is what we're all trying to work towards. And she has prepared a detailed presentation on her views of how you can develop those 11 outcomes. Over to you, Rachel, and thank you very much for putting the time and effort in.
Thank you, Alison, for the wonderful introduction, and thanks also, Zinette, for the introduction. And yeah, good evening, everyone. Let me quickly share my presentation. The presentation is just trying to show, can you confirm if you are seeing the presentation?
Not yet, Rachel.
Okay.
It's coming now. There we go. Perfect. You can just put it on to show now. Thank you. Slideshow. Got it. There you go. Thanks a lot. Off you go.
I'm just trying to minimize. Yeah. So yeah, welcome everyone who has joined. I guess you learn one or two from my presentation. The presentation is just trying to give a guide on how you can achieve competence on the 11 outcomes for registration. I'll be focusing more on the professional engineers. My colleague will be sharing on the professional technologist and the techno. You'll come after me. So this presentation will be focusing more on the engineers. As you are aware, the process for registration for engineers was standardized. So it's now uniform across the board, across the disciplines, across electrical, civil, mechanical. As long as you are registering as a professional engineer, the process is now standardized, and it is the same. This is just a guide of the presentation. I'm more going to focus from the third slide, which is the X11 outcomes, but the first two are just introductory. Due to time limits, I'm not going to focus on this. This is just the POE that you need to submit, which is the portfolio of evidence that you need to submit for registration. As per the introduction by Zinette, You might have a 4-year engineering degree, which is the requirement for professional engineers. So for you, before you submit your application, you need to have that BEng or BSc Eng degree from South Africa, from a South African university. If you are not from a South African university, your qualifications will need to go through the Education Evaluation Committee to confirm your education qualifications, or otherwise the Washington Accord may apply if where you come from they've signed that agreement with EXA. So training and experience, the minimum, which is 3 years, but we know this is not practical and most engineers are not able to register within the 3 years due to the nature of our economy and the nature of work that one is exposed in the area of where you'll be working. And for what makes it a difference between the professional engineers and the technologist is the level descriptor, where the engineer is supposed to solve complex engineering problems and performing complex engineering activities. So let me just see how to move this, it's eating onto my presentation. But for one to achieve competence in the 11 outcomes, one is assessed in 2 stages, which is the experience appraisal stage and the professional review stage. So during the experience appraisal stage, one would have submitted a training and experience report. In that TER, you need to indicate competence in the 11 outcomes. And you need to indicate that you are at least working for at least 1 year at a level E of responsibility. I'll be explaining more on this level of responsibility in the later slides. And you'll be also, the engineering report that you submit, it also needs to indicate competence on the 11 outcomes, as well as the level of responsibility. So the engineering report, at least it should, whatever you're going to examples projects where you have worked, you need to indicate that you're working at level E. The same thing at the professional review stage. When you attend the professional review interview, you need now to demonstrate competence on the 11 outcomes. Remember, at the EA stage, it was only your submission which was being assessed, but at the PR stage, you attend the interview in person or via MS Teams. So you need to demonstrate to the panel that you have achieved the competence on those 2. So just to expand further on the training and experience report, because this is the first submission which the assessors will have in front of them. So they need to prove, they need to indicate that you have achieved competencies on those. So I thought it's best I explain this before I go to the outcomes individually. So in the TER, the training and experience report, you need to describe the work that you did. Do not just list tasks and projects, but explain the role and to what degree you were exposed and actually responsible for. So you need to indicate the work that you did. We know that you work in a team, but in your submission, you need to indicate your personal involvement in the project. And you should not spend more than 1 paragraph describing the work that you worked on. And complete and submit a TER for each phase of training and work experience from graduation to application for registration. Then the training and experience report, it needs to indicate that you have at least 1 year of working at the degree of responsibility E, which is performing, and you address all bullet points on the template form. It is very recommended that you address the topics as per the template. Do not divert and use your own format, and do not exceed 2,000 words. For mature applicants, usually some applicants have 10 or more years experience, but this can be relaxed. You can submit the report for the last 3 years of experience at degree of responsibility E, and you explain in detail, and the report should be signed off by your supervisors. For the engineering report, it covers the aspects of work done by the applicant on all the outcomes. So you need to indicate the work that you have done. It can be one project, it can be several projects, as long as you are addressing each outcome to indicate that you have competence in the outcome. So yes, it may be based on a project or series of projects, and it's a report to reflect your engineering activity at the required level of competence for the 11 outcomes. It must be written in the first person and in English language. Avoid using the word we, if you can use I did this, I as much as possible. They need to indicate that truly you were the one doing the work. Then use also the template for the heading and closure of the report that is provided on the application form. Use as much technical details as possible. Avoid giving summative description of work done. So avoid just saying we designed a 3-story building. You need to indicate the details. So you need to indicate as much calculations as possible. Avoid copying formulas from textbook and punching them into your engineering report. You are now in the field and you're expected to be working on real projects. So you need to be showing, you show the formula, but you show the workings, how you achieved the result, how you did the design. So avoid submitting reports which are too descriptive. You'll be a structural engineer, but you don't submit not even a sketch, So it will count against you to indicate whether you are really achieving competence in one of the outcomes. So the purpose of the engineering report, you need to prove that you are doing engineering work and you are working as a project engineer, not as a project manager. So you need to achieve the competence as an engineer, not as, we know you'll be doing management work, but you should be doing an overall. You do both designs, you do management, and you are aware of the broader aspects of engineering. Then the report body, including headings, subheadings, should be 6,000 words. Again, diagrams, calculation, tables, pictures appropriate to the purpose defined above must not exceed 4 pages. And the report is also a test of written communication of outcome 5. So your ability to structure the report, the style, the language aspect, and the logical development, of how you developed competence on the outcomes. It also tests your outcome 5, which is written communication. And the engineering report, most preferable, should form the basis of the presentation that you, as an applicant, make at the professional review, because the assessors would have studied that and would have prepared questions based on that engineering report. So it will make the process much easier if you present based on the information that you have submitted. So this is just a summary of the PRA review. What it means is you have passed the EA stage. It's a 15-minute presentation and a 45 minutes question answer session. You can print the copies of the presentation or you can email if it's virtual. Then you can also present, additional calculations, drawings. You need to present your ID and you speak in first person. So before we go to the outcomes, I will just go to define what is a complex engineering activity. Step 1 for you you need to identify whether it's an engineering problem. And if it is an engineering problem, does solving the problem require in-depth, fundamental, specialized engineering knowledge? you know, it should, the problem that you present should be different to the work that you did in your final year as a dissertation. It should show that you have now developed your fundamental knowledge. So you need to indicate whether does it solve the required in-depth fundamental specialized engineering knowledge. If you tick, then that's the first step. Then you need to establish the level of complexity of the initial problem state. What is the nature of the problem? Does it have one or more? So these points B, C, D, as long as one of them applies, then it is a complex engineering problem. So the problem should be ill-posed, under or over-specified. It requires identification and refinement. The problem is a high-level problem, includes components or parts or sub-problems. The problem is unfamiliar or involves infrequently encountered issues. So what you need to establish is it a problem where you just start straight into designing, or you have to investigate? This is where the issue of investigation comes, to say, do we need to conduct further investigations onto the problem? So if you have got a structural, if it's a structural project, you cannot just start with designing as a structural engineer. There are some investigations that you need to conduct so that you can identify the problem. So that's why they say, does it require identification and refinement? So does it require for you to do geotech investigations? Does it require you to do topographical surveys? So that you can use that information. This is the information that you input into your design. So as long as it is not, as it is requiring further investigations, and it will be based on the results of that investigation, like your design of the footing or foundation will be dependent on the geotech results, then it is a complex problem. And also some projects will also need a specialist input. So like if it's in water, you might need to do some studies into the water. You might need specialist information to input into your design. So let's say it's a water project and it's in a municipal area. You might need to investigate, you know, to go through all the, let's say, metering data to establish the demand. Yes, there's a red book, but you need to confirm whether the red book, the demands in the red book and what is actually on the ground, are they matching? Or maybe you need to design something that is specific for your problem. So this is where you are trying to establish what inputs. So once you start doing that additional work and you are doing over the standards that are available to come up with a solution that is specific to your engineering problem, then it is a complex problem. Then the problem is unfamiliar, involves infrequently encountered issues. Yes, so some projects, the geotech of the area might have been undermined, you know, and where once the excavation starts, you discover that this is never encountered, and you now need to develop a new solution for that. So that also will make it a complex engineering problem. So that's why it says, does it have one or more? So as long as it has one, then it is a complex engineering problem. Then step 3, determine the complexity of solution path from the initial state. What is encountered in the solution process? Do the solutions have one or more? So if the solutions are not obvious and require originality to analysis based on fundamentals, this is what I was explaining on the water demands, to say maybe you need to go through the meter data for that municipality, and you need to, it means the solution now is not obvious, and you are going to develop a specific solution for that challenge. And the solutions are outside the scope of standards and codes. So sometimes the codes that you have, you might need to go beyond the codes. If you can prove it, then it's also complex. And the solutions require information from a variety of sources that are complex, abstract, or incomplete. So usually when you do your designs, you might need sources from different areas. You need a geotech here, you need a topo survey here, you need water demands here, you need, different sources of information to come up with a solution. And the solutions involve wide-ranging or conflicting issues such as technical and engineering issues and interested or affected parties. So in your projects, you might end up having more than one discipline. You have a geotech engineer, you have got electrical, you've got a structural, you've got a water, you've got the architect. So you have several affected parties. It will make it a complex engineering problem. And determine the level of decision-making required and potential consequences, what is involved in the decision-making while solving the problem. So does the decision require judgment in decision-making, and the decisions have significant consequences in a range of contexts. So this slide is just touching on the degree of responsibility. So as after you graduate, your development stage, you start being exposed, which is DORA, and B, assisting, C, participating, D, contributing, but I'll just focus on E, where you'll be performing. So when you are applying for registration, you should be at the level of performing, where you are working in a team without supervision and recommends work outputs. You'll be responsible but not accountable. Remember, the registered engineer will be accountable. And the level of responsibility to supervisor is appropriate for a registered person. As a candidate, it means you take on problem solving without support, at most limited guidance. So you need to ask yourself before you submit the application, are you now at a level of E, performing? And also if you are recently graduated, just be aware that these are the stages that you need to, that indicate how you'll be growing until you have the level of responsibility E. And when you submit your application, you cannot start indicating that you are at level E. It will just raise up eyebrows. So you need to indicate that you are going through all the stages. You cannot jump and just start being at level E soon after graduating. These are the 11 outcomes, but I'll focus on them. Yeah, I'll focus on them individually. So outcome 1, it's define, investigate, and analyze complex engineering problems. Here you need to define the engineering problem, the method statement for solving the problem. So the problem may be a design requirement, that is for designers, an applied research for those who are in the academic field, or a development requirement for those who are in maintenance or not in the consultants fields, or a problematic situation in an existing component system or process that needs to be solved. So you need to evaluate pertinent information and identify systems and subsystems of the complex problems. You need to analyze the relevant assumptions, inputs, required outputs of a complex problem. So usually for designers, you need to investigate. This is where you get your inputs for your design. Where do you get the inputs from? Investigations. You go to site, you do a site inspection, you do geotech, you do geotech investigations. If it's roads, you do the pavements. You need to test the strength of you do several tests along the pavement. So depending on the type of project that you are doing, you need to ensure that you have done full, thorough investigation so that the inputs to your design can lead to the required outputs of the complex problem. Outcome 2, design or develop solutions to complex engineering problems. Here you'll be carrying out the solution to the problem and testing the validity and reasonability of the assumptions. You need to make use of the first or fundamental principles, an approach that is systematic, but maybe within unfamiliar or previously encountered techniques, which I was explaining under complexity. So you need to articulate the solution and develop an integrated implementation plan. So this is where I was saying you should not just give a highly summative description to say, I did this. You need to articulate the solution, the steps, to say this is how I got to my demands, and this is how I size the system, and all the assumptions, you need to state them. So the solution may be the design of a component, system, or process, or recommendation of the remedy to a problematic situation within context of the defined problem. Outcome three. So on outcome 3, this is where you comprehend and apply fundamental principles. So usually competence on outcome 3 is usually demonstrated when you are also demonstrating competence on outcome 2, because outcome 3, you are displaying your specialist knowledge, which are specific to your local conditions and your jurisdiction. So as you are demonstrating competence on usually on outcome 2, you also be demonstrating competence on outcome 3. So competence is indicated in the evaluation and solution of the complex engineering problem by the application of sound and testable assumptions underpinned by the utilization of requisite advanced knowledge. Specialist knowledge that has depth in the practice area is underpinned by the fundamental knowledge of the engineering discipline. It also demonstrates sound working knowledge of the interacting disciplines, how you input the sources of information from different disciplines into your design to come up with one design, and jurisdictional knowledge that includes the legal and regulatory requirements, in addition to locally relevant codes of practice. So depending on where you are, we all know that certain, let's say, municipalities have their own design guidelines, City of Cape Town, Tshwane. So when you're in Tshwane and doing a project for City of Tshwane, you might need to use their guidelines. So this is where you demonstrate your jurisdictional knowledge. So on outcome 3, you also need to indicate like which standards were you using, which design guidelines you're using, how did you apply them to come up with the solution to the problem that you developed in outcome 2. So outcome 3 indicates an understanding and application of engineering standards specific to your discipline. So just listing the codes or the design guidelines won't assist, but you need to say, to refer to them, they should be an interaction, not just a whole list of design standards. It's not indicating how you're applying. So you need to indicate how you apply you refer to the guideline to come up with the design or solution, the design that you did or the solution that you developed. So for a professional engineer, these are the key outcomes, outcome 1 to 3, I'll come to outcome 9 and 10. And also you need to be at a level E, because this is mainly where you do most of the key engineering work. Outcome 4.
Rachel, sorry to disturb you. You have just said 1 to 3 and 9 and 10 are really important for engineers. I think the others are not that different across the board. Can I please ask you to race along on outcomes 4 to 8 and get to 9 and 10, because we're running out of time. So it concentrates on us, if you don't mind.
Yes. So yeah, outcome 4, and I agree with you. Outcome 4 and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, they are the same across the board. So I'll go to 9 and 10. So 9 and 10, you need to exercise. Outcome 9, you need to indicate to exercise sound judgment on complex engineering activities. So you indicate this by present, you need to indicate through, in your presentation, in your engineering report, you need to highlight where you exercise sound judgment, where you did a comprehensive and systematic application of fundamental principles to complex engineering problems, which have significant implications on a multitude of stakeholders. And you take cognizance that you were accountable and you took responsibility for that judgment that you did. So it can be a technical, it has to be technical to indicate that you have that competence. And judgment in decision making will involve the consideration of diverse, it means you have considered diverse and wide-ranging risk factors. There's significant consequences in a range of contexts and wide ranges of interested and affected parties with varying needs. You took that into consideration. And there was correct use of standards and regulations and regard for the accountability and responsibility in decision-making processes. And outcome 10, so outcome 9 is more related to outcome 1, 2, and 3. And outcome 10 is more related to outcome 4, 6, and 7 to say what decisions were you making in part or all of the complex engineering activities. So you need to indicate that you took responsibility for certain outcomes or certain parts of that activity. And you need to indicate competence in identifying the impacts of implementations of decision or solving the problem. And you consider the negative impacts and assessing risk in a systematic manner. And you're taking responsibility, and you can be held accountable for the far-reaching and significant consequences. Outcome 11 is also across the board, it's uniform. Thank you, Alison. So I will leave outcome 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 11 to the next presenter.
Okay, thank you. Is that the end? Do you got any other pearls of wisdom to share?
Yeah, this is very key. The documents, this presentation which I've done, it's mainly based on that document, RO2 STAPE competence standards for professional categories. So I encourage everyone to go onto the EXA website and download these documents. There's a whole list and they guide you. You can go it in detail. We know the time that we have now is limited, but if you go and look for these documents, they will assist and guide you in preparing your submission for application for professional registration. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. Yeah, the complexity and those first few outcomes are really, really critical for engineers. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I liked your examples about making sure their calculations are not just the equation and not summative. I love that description. It really does capture it very, very well. What did you think about, guys? What are all the variables that you managed? That's what we need to know. So thanks a million, Rachel. We will handle questions a little later. I see there's been requests for presentations. This will be published on YouTube as well. So you can catch up and go through as fast or as slowly as you wish. So there's plenty of time to reflect on that. And Rachel has mentioned RO2 critical, that is your standard. And RO8 is the guidelines on which she's based in a number of the concepts she's shared with you, but of course she's given you practical examples. Our next speaker will be talking about the complexity or what is required in terms of registration for technologists and technicians, and that is Chris Maynard. I've known Chris for years. He gave me a hard time when I was a software supplier. We've had a wonderful relationship for many, many years. He is registered with EXA as both a professional engineering technologist and a professional engineering technician. Has a national diploma, BTech in civil engineering, and over 40 years of experience in the public, private sectors. He's worked in contracting, consulting. He's done it all: design, construction, project management, you name it, he's done it. He's currently the president of the Institute of Professional Engineering Technologists, IPET, and also a member of the Society of Asphalt Technology and the Cement and Concrete SA. So wide interests, wide knowledge, wide experience. Chris has been involved actively as an assessor, reviewer, and moderator for the last 4 years or so. He's also on the appeals roster, so he knows all those funny things that come up when it doesn't work. Very keen to share ideas with you on how to achieve the EXA outcomes, and is also very passionate about this topic. So I will hand over to Chris now and see what he can share with you on the outcomes for technicians and technologists. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Alison. I say thank you, Alison, for the nice introduction. I'll try and share my screen now, so just bear with me. It's quite a long presentation because I'm doing both of them, so we'll try and fit it in the 30 minutes. Okay, let me get into here. Come on. Okay, just wait. Can everybody see my screen?
We can see the screen, you just need to share.
I have shared.
Not the share, sorry, the slideshow.
Yes. Does everybody see it now?
Yes, just do the show. Just do the show.
Okay.
There's usually a bit of a delay.
Okay, thank you.
Go to show.
Okay, so I'll... Okay, introduction. Today I'm going to discuss in general the following: the requirements for registration for technologists, technicians, a practical. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but on my screen the show hasn't come up. Can you just press the little picture on the bottom right or on the top left from the beginning? Do the show.
Let me just go back.
We're seeing the previews and everything.
Now I have done it now. I'm getting stuck. Just a minute.
It's coming now.
Okay, can you see it now?
It's thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't know if it might be slow. I don't think it's on my side. I think my...
Can other people see? I'm just seeing a black box.
It's a black box for now.
Okay, let me see.
Okay, well, maybe you must unshare and then we'll have to look at the previous.
Yeah, I do.
Gosh.
Just end show. Let me get in here. Okay, can somebody see my screen now at the moment before I go to the slide?
There we go. Now we're back to the slide. So we can see the slide. Yeah, click on the first slide as you have done now and see, go to the bottom right to the little picture of a screen. Maybe that'll work better. Left. No, you were there almost.
I mean, from the beginning.
Yeah, okay, there we go. It's come. Oops, I did it for a secchi. Do it from beginning, like you were saying. Go and choose a slide and then.
Okay,
yeah, it's just coming up then.
Can you see it now?
It's thinking about it. On your marks, get set. Oh, no.
It worked well just now.
Yeah.
Let me just get my mouse to get back into here. Is it possible that the other guys can do it from their side, because I did send it to them?
Refill, can you load it and then just keep pressing the arrow buttons for Chris?
Okay. Because I don't know, it might be the connection point. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
Just get
Sorry about this, guys. There we go. VTV has started sharing, we hope. Ah, there we go. Well done. It's up nicely on my screen. No, it's still got the little brinkies down the left, but it's much bigger now, which is better. Chris, was that yours? Is that yours that we're seeing now? Or is that Refiwe?
What do you see now? The registration for technicians and technologists, the picture.
Yeah, but now we're having a preview. Can you turn it on to not have the extra little slide on the right, Refill?
Mine is fully now. How do I get out of this now?
Okay, Refill, are you presenting or is Chris presenting?
I'm presenting, so Chris can just
You're
go with the
presenting.
slides.
Okay, so Chris, it seems that Refill is presenting, but Refill, we can see the preview of the next slide and all the slides below. So you need to still go to.
You wouldn't believe it. Okay. Now I'll get out of my slide.
Okay, all right,
It's
you're
not
out,
showing.
Chris. Now just go and try and share again, please. Sorry, guys. Are you going to make Chris the host again, Refill, or what you're going to do? Refill, advice, please.
Yes, I'll just assist with sharing the slides. Okay.
Okay, it's coming up. Yeah, okay, now we need to go to the show. Go and choose the first slide and then go to the show.
I see now on your side. That's fine.
Yes, okay. Refill, where can you go to slideshow? The little thingy on the bottom right. Press the little screen on the bottom right. Okay, goodness. For the time being, I suggest you go. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay.
I thought that you could see
you
that.
may carry on. It was perfect and it went. Do that again. I don't know which button you didn't click or did click. Sorry, guys, really apologies. Oh, somebody's suggesting to PDF the presentation and then start presenting. There we go. That's perfect.
Okay, I can see. I'm just going to take I'm just taking the video off by my side.
Okay, that's fine.
Just to give a bit of admin. Okay, I've done can we go to the second slide quickly?
Okay, good show. Off you go. So we're running a bit late now, as fast as you can.
Okay. Introduction. Today I'm going to discuss in general the following: the requirements for registration, technologist, technician, practical perspective of achieving the 11 outcomes for technicians and technologists, and then as a bonus, do's and don'ts when completing your application, attending your experience or professional interview. Next. Next slide. Okay, what is the difference between technologist and technician? Definition is stated in the EXA policy or document RO2, STA, PE, PT, PCE, PN. Competency standard for registration in professional categories as PE, PT, PCE, PN, revision 1, 20th August 2020, as described below. Technologist, it says broadly defined engineering problems require coherent and detailed engineering knowledge underpinning the applicable technology area. Technician, well-defined engineering problems are mainly solved by practical engineering knowledge underpinned by related theory. Next. Required competency standards for technician and technologist. Now, they've already shown this, so we can skip this quickly because it's just the group A and that, the knowledge base, so we can skip this slide. Next slide. Skip this slide. Next slide. Okay, now we're coming here. What is the test required for a well-defined engineering problem for technician? Test to be conducted for a well-defined engineering problem is found in the EXA policy document RO2, STA, PE, PT, PCE, PN. Competency standard for registration in professional categories PEPC revision 1, 20 August 21 on page 15 under table 4, illustrating the test for a well-defined engineering problem. Next slide. Okay, this is what is there written in that document on that page. You can go through this on your own time if you've taken it down. It says, can the problem be solved? What is the nature of the problem? What is encountered in the solution process? What is involved in decision-making while solving the problem and evaluating the solution? There are your factors are there. You have to read those through. Okay, next one. Okay, practical perspective of 11 outcomes for technician. Outcome number one. Outcome number one, it states here, define, investigate, and analyze well-defined engineering problems encountered at your work. Here you have 3 keywords, and this you must remember. Define, what is your interpretation of your instruction? Do you understand what is required? Investigation, collect the required information you need to be able to do your design, and analyze the information you collected, how you use this information to get the required outcome as per instruction. And did you need to change that instruction? Was it different to what you originally had in your definition, defining the top there? Next. Outcome 2 is design and develop a solution to a well-defined engineering problems encountered in your work. Here you discuss the following under item 2.1. Solutions you developed, alternative solutions to the identified work. What checks did you conduct to determine the various impacts of the various solutions on your decision? Item 2.2 there. Here you state your reasons as to your choice of your final solution. Next slide. Okay, the practical perspective of 11 outcomes, outcome 3. Comprehend and apply your knowledge in establishing engineering practices and knowledge specific within your area of practice as applied in your task. Outcome 3.1. Here you state how you applied your understanding of the National Diploma Advanced Certificate Engineering Practical or Diploma Engineering or Diploma Engineering Technician theory for your solution. There you must understand and tell what formulas, what understanding, what techniques, and what you would done and use to get your solution. Item 3.2, here you submit your calculations and the reasons to be applied to the applied theory you stated under item 3.1 as to why you considered it as correct. Next slide. Outcome 4, manage part of all of one or more well-defined engineering activities embodied in your work. Item 4.1. There's a 2-part in this item. How do you manage yourself? Next part, how do you manage priorities, processes, resources in doing your work? Here you discuss briefly the tools you use to do project management in your project. Like if you're using a diary to manage yourself, managing priorities, your to-do list, processes, and resources, use a Gantt chart or your bar chart. Item 4.2, what was your responsibility in the project team and how did you interact in the team? You did not do the work on your own. You worked with different disciplines. So you have to understand that and explain that to us. Next. Next slide. Outcome 5, communicate clearly with others in the course of your engineering activity. It's a well-defined engineering work. 5.1, under this item, you discuss your communication skill in presentation. What is the medium you used for the work to be done? Did you do it by hard copies or did you do it by either what we're doing now with PowerPoint or other means? Here you must also discuss how you wrote a report for the work you completed. Item 5.2, discuss how to give an instruction to the people working with you, like your colleagues and the contractors or whoever that is working with you. Next slide. Outcome 6, recognize the reasonable, foreseeable social, cultural, and environmental effects of your well-defined engineering activity or task. 6.1. Here you discuss the impact of your engineering activity in relation to social. Here you identify the social impact like improvement of living conditions, job creation, and other items there. Cultural, here you discuss the cultural impact of your engineering activity may have like religious beliefs that will have an effect on your engineering activity. Item 6.2, Here you discuss the effects of your engineering activity and who did you engage to discuss with, for instance, local community structures or business forums. Next slide. Outcome 7, meet all legal and regulatory requirements and protect health and safety of persons in the course of your well-defined engineering activity task. 7.1, here you list all the legal and regulatory requirements applicable for your engineering activity. When you do a design or site work, look for the required legal and regulatory requirements. For instance, the OSH Act, the VULA Act, the Water Act. All these have effect that you must know about. Discuss briefly what you did to ensure safety and health issues being addressed. So that is your safety file. How did you go about it to ensure that it was right? Item 7.2. Here you discuss the risk management you sought advice on and how you applied the risk management system. So you go to somebody who does a risk management and you look and see what they're doing and see what level it is, the matrix of your risk management. Next slide. Outcome 8, conduct engineering activities ethically in executing your work. 8.1, here you state all ethical issues you encounter in your work situation. Who were the parties involved and how did you resolve the issue? Examples like bribery, over-designing, over-measurement, over-claiming. That is engineering in the context of engineering activity, of a well-defined engineering activity. Item 8.2, here you confirm with a yes or no, and please read the EXA code of conduct for a registered person. Many people forget that, and when you get asked about it, they don't know what is going on there. Next slide. Outcome 9, exercise sound judgment in the course of well-defined engineering activities encountered in your work. Remember, this section has relevance to what you have stated in outcomes 1 and 2. This is where you use your engineering judgment, taking into account the factors you used in outcomes 1 and 2, how you applied the interaction between the factors taken into account. Next slide. Okay, item 9.1. It's still outcome 9. You need to break this down to the keywords. What is the interrelationship of the applicable factors? How did you apply the identified factors? Item 9.2. Here you made an engineering judgment call even when not all the evidence was available for your design. Next one. Okay, outcome 10, be responsible for making decisions on part or all of well-defined engineering activities, including in your work. Remember the section, as I said above, has relevance to what you have stated in outcome 1 and 2. Now, outcome 10.1, here you discuss your theoretical calculations you used that influenced your decision to do your engineering work. 10.2, from where? From who did you seek advice from outside of your education and experience? Who did you go to? Where did you get the information? How did it influence your decision? Next one. Okay, 10.3. Discuss how you took ownership of your own work. Discuss the shortcomings of your output when you evaluated your work. Where you see you had some problems, how did you go about it? And you took ownership of your design. You took ownership of your decision that you made. Next slide. Okay, outcome 11. Undertake professional development activities sufficient to maintain and extend your competence. Under this outcome, you discuss you and your employer's philosophy in regards to professional development. Remember, you must have knowledge about the continuous professional development requirements. So basically, professional development is nothing stands still. Technologies change. We get new technologies. How do you go about to ensure that you stay ahead with the new technologies that are in your field of competency? Okay, next slide. Okay, now we're going to go to technologists. We finished the 11 outcomes for technicians. Now we're going for technologists. Now, what is required for a broadly defined engineering problem technologist? It is also the same document, the RO2 STA PE PT PCE, competency standard for registration in professional categories. But on page 13 under table 3, that is where the questions you have to ask yourself if you're on the level of a technologist. Next slide. You will see the steps are different. They are more different to compare what is required for a technician. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through all of it. Okay, we're going to go to outcome 1. Define, investigate, and analyze broadly defined engineering problem encountered at your work. Define, it's under item 1.1. Is the problem identifying a broadly defined engineering problem? That's a question you have to ask, and you have to go back to that table to make sure that it is there. Now, investigate. How did you go about collecting, organizing, and evaluating the information you collected for the identified broadly defined engineering problem? So it's the information you collect to do your design, to solve your problem. How did you go about it? Now analyze. How did you interpret this information you collected and the assumptions that were taken to derive a solution? This is not your final design. This is what you used to make the assumption and to analyze your information that you collected. Next slide. Now, in simple terms, it means what was the problem? How did you collect the information? And using this information with the certain engineering assumptions to achieve the solution or solutions. Next slide. Outcome 2, design or develop a solution to broadly defined engineering. Now you design or develop is item 2.1. Here did you discuss your design or development of your solution based on the problems identified, information collected, and assumptions made in outcome 1. So solution 2.2, item 2.2, here you discuss what designs or solutions you used to solve the identified broadly defined engineering activity. Please note designs or solutions are in plural. So you don't just discuss one, you discuss maybe 2, 3. Next slide. After you have identified the different solutions, state which was the best solution to be used and why did you opt to that solution. It could be due to design life, it could be due to financial, or it could be due to some engineering judgment that you used. You have to tell us why you used that solution, why you didn't use the others. Now specifications 2.3. Discuss what detailed specifications you drew up and design documentation to the satisfaction of the employer and client. So this is where you design, where you discuss your tender document if you're working, the specifications, the project specifications you wrote in there, or your specifications or your notes that you wrote onto the side of your design drawing. This is where you discuss that. Next slide. Okay, outcome number 3. Comprehend and apply the knowledge embodied in widely accepted and applied engineering procedures and processes, systems or methodology, and those specific to the jurisdiction in which you practice. Now, in this outcome, you demonstrate your ability in planning, investigation, and operations in the area of your competency. Now, 3.1 is your technical knowledge. Is your technical knowledge identified in the field of practice applicable and well established, irrespective of your location? Now, working knowledge. There's a difference. Now, this is a technical knowledge is what you used, your experience, and your BTEC subjects that you have used to do there. Now, your working knowledge. Does your working knowledge of your field of practice interact with other disciplines? Now, that means engineering and others. A good example is to get the rocket to the moon. How many different disciplines interacted with each other? Next slide. Now, your financial, jurisdictional knowledge, safety, and management. What is your knowledge, which includes financial, legal, and regulatory requirements relevant to local codes of practice, safety, and management? The knowledge you discuss here is the relevant technical, working, financial, jurisdictional, safety, and management knowledge that you are applicable for your field of practice. Not all fields of practice will have the same. So here you discuss what you have is applicable in your field of practice. Next slide. Outcome 4, manage part or all of one or more broadly defined engineering activities. Here you discuss your management skills for a broadly defined engineering activity. 4.1, how do you manage yourself, people, work priorities, and processes of a broadly defined engineering activity? What tools do you use to manage yourself, people, work, and priorities and processes? Now, is it evidence provided for planning, organizing, leading, and ability to control the broadly defined engineering activity? This is a question you have to ask when you're doing 4.2. Now, item 4.3, how do you establish and maintain a professional and business relationship with your clients, contractors, and consultants? What tools are you using? What contracts are you using? How do you control that? And what are you doing to be able to do that? Next slide. In a nutshell, for this outcome, how do you actually manage, plan, and maintain professional and business relationships during an identified, broadly defined engineering activity? That's what you have to discuss in outcome 4. Next slide. Outcome 5, communicate clearly with others in the course of your engineering activities. Now, here you demonstrate your communication skills. How do you write a technical report that is concise, effectively, legally, and editorially correct? That's 5.1. 5.2, how do you give a clear instruction to various stakeholders, and what formats do you use? This is usually your site instructions that you give, or instructions to your subordinates that are working under you, or as an instruction to a client that you clearly need information. How do you go about that? What mediums do you use? Next slide. Okay. How do you do presentations, and what appropriate formats do you use for your audience when presenting a broadly defined engineering activity? This is where you do a presentation, what mediums you're using, what happens you do if you have a power failure, as what we do now. How do you go about it? Now, in summary, how do you communicate with others, and what platforms and styles do you use for your communications for a broadly defined engineering activity? That is a question you have to ask yourself when you're doing outcome 5. Next slide. Outcome 6, recognize and address the reasonably foreseeable social, cultural, and environmental effects of broadly defined engineering activities. Now, who are the interested and affected parties, and what are their expectations in the relationship to the interactions with? Your technical considerations, that's where you do your design, you take into consideration. Social considerations is how are you going to do job creations, and what structures are you going to use to talk to the community. Cultural considerations, that's where you got to maybe grave sites, nearing grave areas, heritage areas, and that you have to take into consideration. environmental considerations. What effect will your design, what you're doing, have on the environment? If it's a road and it goes through a wetland, are you allowed to do that? That you have to find out. Next slide. Now you have to also take the long-term sustainability considerations, for instance, like the maintenance of a water network or of the road, of the stormwater. These you take into consideration, labor and job creations. All right. What measures did you take to reduce negative effect of your engineering activity under item 6.2? We do get negative effects to the environment on the engineering activity. How did you limit it? What did you take to limit that? Now, note, all these considerations are under the evaluation and planning tasks of your area of competency for a broadly defined engineering activity. You must be able to supply evidence for outcome 6. Next slide. In summary, for outcome 6, the outcome 6 is where you plan and evaluate and broadly defined engineering activity and take into the consideration of the effect of the technical, social, cultural, environmental, and long-term sustainability effects it has on the area where your design is being done. Also in outcome 6, the negative environmental effect of the broadly defined engineering activity to be identified and what was done to minimize this effect on the environment. Okay, next slide. Outcome 7, meet all legal and regulatory requirements and protect and safety of persons in the course of his or her broadly defined engineering activity. Now, what are the legal requirements for the applicable engineering activity under 7.1? You must also be able to name them. What are the regulatory requirements of the applicable engineering activity? There you have to discuss that, also name them. And when you're asked for any of these legal and regulatory requirements, you must be able to explain in a short sentence, what is their purpose? What are the health and safety requirements for the applicable engineering activity? And what standards are required for broadly defined engineering activity? This is all to do with the regulatory and requirements and the protection of people on the site and make sure that you understand what is required. Next slide. What circumstances did you assist or demonstrate a selection of sustainable material that was a saving? It's, for instance, if you take a design and you can see you can change your pipe design to a cheaper pipe with the same standard without having any effect to your design, you can do that. And you tell us why you did it and what was your reasoning. Then, what risks did you identify and how did you apply the risk management strategies to minimize the risk? Here is talking about risk management. What did you do and what metrics did you use when you identified certain risks? And you must be able to tell us what is the level of the risks. To summarize outcome number 7, it is the legal and the regulatory requirements with the risks identified and what measures were taken to minimize these risks. And that is basically, can we go to slide 8? The next slide, sorry. Okay, outcome 8, conduct engineering activity ethically. And here you confirm of EXA's code of conduct. But you must understand what is required for ethical behavior under EXA's code of conduct. You must also be able to apply professional ethics, understand the application of responsibilities and norms of engineering practice within your own limits of competency. So you discuss that of where you've got a situation and how did you solve it. Please take note, you must read EXA's code of conduct for a registered person. And this is the same what I said previously. Next. The summary of outcome number 8, you confirm you understand and have read the EXA Code of Conduct for registered persons and understand the ethical issues under this code. Okay, you can go next slide. Outcome 9, exercise sound judgment in the course of broadly defined engineering activities. As what I said previously, and my colleague said previously in the previous presentation, 9 and 10 is coupled to outcome 1, 2, and 3. Here you must exercise judgment in arriving at a conclusion within your application of technologies, and you must also indicate their interrelationship with other disciplines and technologies. So if you're doing civil, did you work with electrical or did you work with mechanical guys, and what was the interrelationship with them? You need to consider the risks and consequences of the applied technology and how does it affect the parties involved. Here you discuss your applied technology and if there is anything and what effect does it have on the parties. In summary, you need to indicate how you derived at your decision in the design using sound engineering judgment at the level of a broadly defined activity. So you are taking your judgment, you're doing engineering judgment on your designs. Remember that. Next slide. Now, outcome 10, to be responsible for making decisions on part or all of broadly defined engineering activities. Here you discuss the considerations you took into forming your decision in engineering social, environmental, sustainability, development in discharging your responsibility for parts of one or more activities. Now, here you remember you had to do engineering, social, and environmental and sustainable development. Here you discuss it just further and you tell us there what it is into relationship with outcome 1, 2, and 3. You must indicate advice you sought from a responsible authority on matters out of your field of competency. Usually this can be a government or a specialist where you do not be able to do it, but you want to get more information to help you with your design. You must demonstrate the use of academic knowledge at the level of BTech combined with your past experience when formulating your decision. Now, next slide. Now, in summary, you must be able to demonstrate taking responsibility for your decisions of a broadly defined engineering activity. So here you take responsibility for your design or for your decisions you've made at the level of broadly defined engineering activity. But please note, I've said this before, outcomes 9 and 10 are directly linked to outcomes 1, 2, and 3. Next slide. Now, outcome 11, undertake professional development activities sufficient to maintain and extend his or her competency. Under item 9.1, you discuss what you have done independently to ensure you have professionally kept up to date with new developments in your field of engineering practice. Now, outcome 9.2, you discuss what you believe in regard to your professional development, how you go about it, what do you believe in, what did you think you're going to do in the future, and that. Also, in summary, you must be able to discuss how you ensured your professional development in the past and also in the future. Now, also, please note, ensure you have read EXA's continuous professional development policy and understand what is there. You will most probably get questions asked about that. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to come to one of the items that we get quite regularly when I'm doing assessments, the do's and don'ts. I'm going to briefly discuss some do's and don'ts that you can take note of. Completing your applications. Do's. Prepare your application as per supplied format. Do not change the format. Check your application for spelling and grammar errors. Read your application several times to ensure it conveys what you are indicating. Clearly indicate your responsibilities in projects you have named in your application. Now we're just going back to read your application several times to ensure it conveys what you are indicating clearly. A lot of people don't do that. Take it, read it, go away and come back and read it and see if it's giving you what you want to say. Next slide. Fully understand what is required from each form and also for each outcome. Preferably choose one project for outcomes 1, 2, 3. I forgot to put something in there, but read the EXA policy documents for your specific registration category. That is RO2, RO8, RO3, and then your guidelines for your registration document. Don'ts. Don't rush through your application form. Don't use words like etc., see attachments, and general statements. Don't use technical terms that you do not understand. Next slide. Now, attending an interview. Do's. Prepare your presentation and limit it to 15 minutes that is allowed in the professional review. Know your work, projects in your report and presentation. When speaking about projects, state yourself as I and not we. What I usually tell the applicants is it's me, myself, and I. Remember that. Do not know your subject being asked. If you do not know a subject being asked about, say you do not know. Do not try and say, yes, I know, and then you don't. Just say, it's not my scope of work, or I do not know. Be honest. Know how to set up your presentation via the social platform used by EXA. We do get a lot of the guys coming in, applicants coming in, and they do not know how to set up the platform. Practice at the house. Practice makes perfect. Next slide. Practice on your own and before colleagues your presentation. That does help. And don'ts in your interview. Be overconfident in your interview. Use general terms during the interview. Do not use layman terms when answering a question posed by the interviewer. Do not preempt questions during the interview. Do not fiddle with the camera during the interview. Next slide. Do not argue with the interviewers if you feel the question was unfair, and just state that you feel the question was unfair after the interview when afforded the opportunity, not during the interview. Do not ask the interviewers if you were successful at the end of the interview. I can tell you one thing, we will not tell you. Next slide. Okay, in conclusion, I've discussed practical perspectives required for the 11 outcomes for engineering report, Form C 2.3 ER for the technician and technologist. I've also discussed the do's and don'ts when completing your application and during the interview. Next slide. Acknowledgement. The presentation is based on the Engineering Council of South Africa, EXA's documents, policy documents, RO2, application form for registration as professional engineering technician, application form for registration as professional engineering technologist. And next slide. Now I've come to the end of the presentation and thank you all for attending. So any questions, they will allow you. Thank you. I'm complete now. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you so much, Chris. That you did very well with your timing, considering you needed to cover both categories. So that's wonderful.
I don't know how I did it in my 30 minutes.
Yeah, just about.
Okay, that's good.
Over, but you did very well.
Thanks.
Great, that's fantastic. And I'm sure there will be more questions. There have been some coming up on the Q&A already, and we'll address those a little later. Now we're going to quickly handle the quiz. I'm going to ask Zena to talk about it, but I think the URL has been put in the chat. Zena, do you want to take over?
Thanks, Alison. I must say that I wish I had like these sorts of conversations before I registered. It would have made my path a lot easier to meander. But I hope the audience is taking much benefit out of it. So you should see the URL for the quiz in the chat. Please let me know if you can't see it and we'll repost it. So the chat is going to be a series of questions. We've got 12 questions that you need to answer. The questions are listed in the actual link as well. You click on the link and it will take you to a spot where you can choose the questions. And we'll have 10 minutes to answer the questions, as many as you can. The first 5 people to answer the most questions are the winners. And the winners, in spirit of getting registered as quickly as we can, will be allowed to submit their documentation for EXA to the SAICI Johannesburg branch, where we will review your submission and give you some input and some pointers and items in terms of what needs to be changed, so that you can do a mock review before you actually submit your actual presentation. So if you haven't seen the link, please let me know. But you should see it under VTV, myregistration.co.za. So click on it quickly. You've got 10 minutes, so we will end at 19:42. And I'll just run through the questions. Who is SAICI's president? A. Vishal Lashman, B. Vishal Krishanbhat, and C. Fana Marukla. The second one is, what does the acronym SAICI stand for? South African Institute of Civil Engineers, South African Institute of Civil Engineer, South African Institution of Civil Engineering. What year was SAICI started? 1903, 1905, 1893. Question number 4. How many divisions does SAICI have? A, 11, B, 9, C, 12. The fifth question is, what is the name of the magazine SAICI distributes to its members? A, the Civil Engineer, B, Civil Engineering, and C, Engineer IT. I see somebody saying that the link doesn't work.
Oh my.
I think you've got a a pop-up that blocks you. It's probably a security. So you just need to copy and paste the link. Let me just slide my side.
Oh, I think we should all try it quickly and see.
Okay, so if you take the link and you just copy it and paste it, don't click on it. Copy it and paste it into your Chrome or your Internet Explorer or Firefox, whichever one you're using, and then you should be able to access it. Okay, the Fiore Lucifi says it's working on her end. Nkosinati says it's not working. Nkosinati, if you can just copy paste. Lizelle says it's not working for her either. Joshua says it's not working. Please slide on your side, just copy paste and into the Internet Explorer. And let me know if you guys are getting it, because time's running out. Can I also ask you that you post questions in the Q&A, just so that it's easy to answer at the Q&A session? Okay, Chris says it's working under Chrome, copy and paste. Let me know if you guys are winning.
Okay, I got to the end of mine. I don't know whether I got the answers right, but it says I have already done it. So I guess people have been using my email address to test it. Have any of you got to the end? I think just pop in the chat finished for those of you who finished, so we've got a sense of where we're at, whether we're doing all right. Okay, somebody's done. That's cool.
Sean said he's done. So as you're done, maybe just post the chat as well.
Oh gosh, Betty's getting the same messages. You know what, Betty? Maybe it's because we're already in my reg. But you've got us looking after your application anyway. Done. Okay,
Tom, you're
Tom's
done. Tanda's done.
How funny. So Kuto's also got free safe tests. I got that message. Okay, it seems that most people are doing okay.
Nick is done. Sivigile is done. Tanda's done.
Okay.
So we still have a few minutes. Good, so it says
Yeah, maybe anybody who's used this test system before, then you might still be registered there.
Oh, I see.
Okay, Tom, so the certificated engineer helped you out, did it? Lovely. How strange. Some people are getting the duplicate and others aren't. It must be something to do with the way everybody's registered for the workshop. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if there's a limit to the number of people who could do it. Very weird. We seem to have hit the limit of people being done.
Oh. Okay, so
okay. I guess anybody who hasn't done, well, the ones who were first out of the block made it.
Yeah.
Okay?
yeah.
Okay.
So, sorry guys, because
yeah, that's quite weird. So sorry about that, but okay, there were certainly about 20 or 25 to start off with who had managed, so we'll have to go through those to pull out of the hat to see who the 5 are. Hey? Great. So now we basically get to the Q&A. I do see that people have been writing questions. And some answers have been given to the Q&A already. So let's have a look. Patty, how would you like to deal with this? I kind of almost think we've answered most of the things written in the Q&A. Chris, Rachel, anything particular you want to talk about that has come up? I can see a few I would be happy to comment on if neither of you are happy. So the ones that seem not to have been answered is about not saying whether you're electrical, civil, or what specialization field you're in. Have we got any input on that? Would either of you like to talk about it? It is PR Tech Eng or PR Techni or PR Eng. It actually doesn't state the discipline. Comments? Either of you?
I'll come in.
Yes, go on. I saw Rachel put her hand up. Rachel, do you want to put your speaker on?
Yeah. Yes, I understand where the participant is coming from to say the PR title is not specific to a discipline. But remember, once you are a professional engineer, you are guided by the code of conduct. So it will also answer the question the other participant had asked about competency. So once you are a professionally registered engineer, you are guided by the code of conduct. And what it says is you may not undertake work for which your training and experience is not exposed to you. So even though it's not specific, but we are guided by the code of conduct. So you may not undertake work, like myself, I'm a civil engineer. I may not go around pretending to be an electrical engineer because I'm guided by the code of conduct. So currently that's how it is handled. Thanks.
Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Alison. Now, your code of conduct does state that. And also your field. So basically, if you become a professional in either engineer, technologist, technician, you will know where you can go and what are your boundaries. So the code of conduct is our guideline. That's why they don't say you electrical, civil, or mechanical, or what, because the fields in civil, electrical, mechanical, or chemical are so wide and vast. So your specialist field is that where you know and where you're comfortable in that you use. So that's why they don't write it down. Otherwise, it will get too large in the end for them. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Alison. Can I answer the next question that they're about project management competency?
Yes, let's just
qualify.
Absolutely. Let's just wrap up on the registration. You know, it does also happen, perhaps not as much in civil, but in many of the other disciplines where you actually end up, because of the experience you've gained, straddling a couple of the disciplines, like the electricals, mechanicals, you've got electromechanical, even civil. Sometimes we end up going more into agricultural, and so you don't want to be restricted because it's based on your education, training, and experience. And if you've developed the expertise, you're not going to say, oh, you've got to be in that little block. You do grow over your years, over your career, and that does give you the opportunity to stand up and be counted in the area that you have developed the expertise. Chris, share with us the one about project management. Yes, please.
Okay, before I go there, the one you were telling about, in the field of agriculture, I actually do also agriculture because I worked with agricultural engineers and hydraulic engineers for over many years. So that you pick up that experience, which is correct, what you're saying there, Alison. Okay, now let's go to the project management competency qualified PR technologist registration. If you've done your BTech in civil engineering or in one of the fields of electrical and you go over to project management, you must decide what you're going to do. Are you doing project management purely, or are you doing engineering project management? Engineering project management is very different compared to the guys that are doing just plain project management. Yeah, we run our projects, we do designs, we check designs, we see how they go. So that is where the designing comes in. So you have to look at to see if you are working in that field of your project in engineering. So I always say there's a difference between project management and engineering project management. So hopefully that does help you to understand that there. Okay, thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Chris. Next question. A question about the pandemic. Do either of you want to talk about that? Look, what I can say though is since June or July last year, X have recognized that submitting original signatures, having to get to every supervisor to sign with wet ink, to mentor, to referees, to and so on and so forth, it was not practical. So electronic signatures are fine, and they have swapped to doing the interviews online. So I think we might have lost 2 or 3 months while they were going through the transition. But certainly since about July or August, things have been going smoothly, and the programs we've been running, quite a few people have actually registered. Either of you had any difficulties?
To be honest, Alison, we had a transitional problem, you know, because we weren't used to the MS Teams and those are the things. But nowadays it's running very smoothly, and we're using a lot of emails. And if we do have queries, we do get everything. It's not like in the past where it used to be basically fully paper-based. You had to go in and do the assessments and things like that, or the interviews face-to-face. Nowadays, we do it via Teams, and it's actually working very well. We did have teething problems like any new system, but I don't think we will ever have face-to-face anymore to the extent. There will be some that will require it, but I think majority will be done by Teams and Microsoft Teams. I don't know if my colleague feels the same the way. It's actually working better.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you on that.
And the one thing that does, sorry, I just want to come in. We don't have to battle with traffic to get to EXO in time.
Absolutely. And also for traveling, we had a lot of people complaining about having to take days off to travel from the smaller centers. Chris, while you're on the line, do you want to talk about the advantage of registering as PR Techni and PR Tech Eng? Is there really an advantage? Or if you finished your BTech and haven't registered as PR Techni in the past, would you bother to do both, or would you just register as a PR?
Just go straight to PR Tech Eng.
Yeah.
Why I did it with my case was I had my diploma and I had many years of experience, and then I did the PR Techni Eng, and I was told by a colleague of mine that I should actually register for PR Tech Eng, which I did before I even got my BTech. So it's for you to decide, but there's no advantage at all. The only difference is your responsibilities change. From PR Techni Eng, you have not got the same responsibility and design as what you've got with the PR Tech Eng. I've discussed that in my presentation. What is the difference? It's a well-defined engineering activity for PR Techni Eng, and for PR Tech Eng, it's a broadly defined engineering activity where you actually use the guidelines, but you think out of the box. Techni Eng, you use the guidelines for your design. That's it. Okay.
Thank you.
There.
Thank you. The next one, can we use a master's thesis as part of our submission? I see it does say Rachel's busy typing, but I don't see Rachel's typing. Do you want to talk about that, Rachel, or have you now completed that?
Yes, thanks, Alison. I wanted to say, yes, you can present your master's thesis to demonstrate competence on outcome 1, 2, and 3, as long as you have that minimum 3 years experience working, and also you are able to indicate that you are working at degree of responsibility level E. So yes, you may present.
So it wouldn't, in other words, it wouldn't only be your master's thesis, it would be your master's thesis as part of the submission for outcome 1, 2, and 3. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Super. Mature candidates registering as a professional engineer or technician or technologist. It doesn't matter whether you've got 3 or 30 years experience. The forms are exactly the same. It's just jolly much harder work writing up 30 years. And that's where you have the training and experience outlines, which you may use to summarize some of your early experience. I don't think there's really anything more to say there, is there?
Yes, can I come in there, Alison?
Sure.
On there. Now, for mature candidates for professional technologist and technician, you must go there to your document RO2, STA, PT, PE, PC, E, and PN. At the bottom, Annexure A and Annexure B at the back, there they will tell you how many years of experience you need to have to qualify to go and apply on the alternative route, the educational route. There you got your documents that is different. Outcomes 1 to 5, if I remember right, is where you have to fill in a different form, but from 6 to 10, I mean to 11, it's the same for technician and for technologists. Okay. So please go and look at that document. It explains it nicely there. What is minimum requirements there of how many years of training, experience you have to pick up, and how many years of a level E, which means limited supervision. It tells you there. There's a very nice table put out in there. Thank you, Alison.
I see that Tom McKeown's in the audience. Tom, can you answer the next two? About the B-Eng Tech and carrying on with honors and masters and so on and so forth. Are you still here?
Listen, remember, an audience.
Yeah, he can't, we can't hear him. Can you just answer in the chat maybe? Let's carry on to the next questions. Would somebody give him a call and ask him if he will give us the answers in the chat, please? Okay. Patricia's got a question about working in roads, but her BTech is in water. Does that mean she's working outside of her competency? Is that a problem? Would anybody like to comment on that?
Okay, can I come in there, Alison?
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah.
Okay, you did your BTech, for instance, in water engineering and became a water specialist, but your training over the years that you picked up was under roads. You can apply for your registration as a road person. It doesn't stop you. Basically, your BTech is it's like a license of your driving car. You get your license, but you learn how to drive your vehicle under different conditions. This happens many times, people, where you decide you want to do water engineering, but through circumstances, you get pushed into road designing and building roads and working on roads. That is no problem. But just make sure that you got the required experience and the required training that you do with your IPD courses and to get up to the level that you require. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, if you think about it, you know that when you've done that hectic water theory or whatever it is, there were many fundamental engineering principles at the BTech level you covered, not just water, and contract management maybe, and all sorts of other bits and pieces. So they all contribute to that BTech level thinking. So the specific last 6 equations or whatever it is doesn't limit you to say you will be in this space. But as Chris said, the experience, the training must get you there. So now we've got, do technologists need to include the experience prior to getting a BTech? In other words, experience working with a national diploma.
Okay, I'll come in again there. Like I said to, this is a common question that we do get. You know, as assessors, and even my colleague will even say that too, even within for your engineering, professional engineers, technologists, technicians, start when you got your degree or diploma. You put there, we would like to see where you started assisting and how you developed to go up to, for instance, if you're doing BTech to become a professional technologist, how did you develop to get to that field? Sometimes what happens is while you were doing so-called, you said you were a technician, and we look at your TER and we see you already were working as a technologist and you were already working at level E in your description. So that gives us a good idea of where you came from, how you developed, and to where you are now. So do include that. Thank you.
Okie dokie. And I've lost my Q&A. I was trying to see all of you guys. Sorry. Okay, so we've got, yes, please, the experience after the national diploma. There have been several questions about CPD. Going on CPD, IPD, will that help me towards registration? How many points do I need? Or, are there guidelines? Can either of you comment? Oh, I see Rachel's also typing an answer. Rachel, do you want to just tell us what your answer is?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there's no minimum number required for CPD points before the registration, but you need to indicate that you are showing some initiative to attend the CPDs. So you need to show that you are planning your development, you are attending the CPDs to further enhance your knowledge. So you need to indicate that you are attending. So there's no minimum required. It becomes compulsory to attend CPDs after you've been registered. And also I'd recommend all participants to check the CPD policy for EXA on the EXA website. It will detail how you can obtain CPD points. So it's not only those paid courses which you need to attend, but there's a lot of individual work that you can do to attain CPD points. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Rachel. I do think it needs to be mentioned that it doesn't have to be CPD accredited courses. It's actually everything you need to do to develop as a professional. There have been many times when this whole issue has come to the committees and said, what should we prescribe for people prior to registration? And they've said, no, whatever it is to help you grow to be that professional. So if it has to be public speaking or negotiating, then so be it. Of course, if it's technical, it's in your own interest to go on courses that are CPD validated, because then you know you're getting the kind of quality that you want out of the course that is being delivered. So it's all, you know, the whole, it's your growth and it's your professional judgment as to what you need, and that you write in Outcome 11 what you've planned, what you thought of, what you believe you need to get to being a professionally registered person. Now, Kazamula Chris has asked about, can a PR technique sign off engineering designs? There's also the next question about what happens as a technologist if you're not doing much design work. Is it okay if you verify designs? There are quite a few design questions. Could you maybe just take them all together? Because I think they all really talk to each other.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Okay, professional technologist is allowed to sign off engineering designs. If it's your design and it is in your scope of work, you can sign off your drawing, your design. Now, I'm going to give a general, I get this quite regularly about the design under the, if you're doing you're not doing designing work, but you're checking work. You work for contractors. You're not doing designing. You work in a managerial position. You're a manager. You say you're not doing design, but you're checking designs. For instance, in a managerial position, and you check the designs. Even as a contractor, you check the designs. You see there's a problem with the design. What do? You don't just send it back. You look at the design and you look for a solution. You do your own internal design, and you do the different options and you submit it to the guys and say, listen here, guys, this is what I found and this is my design. This is the options I looked at and this is how I came up with the best option. To me, it's the best option. What do you think? That is designing also. So please don't think you have to go and work for consultants. Contractors do a lot of temporary design work. They do also permanent design work. For instance, doing shoring. Those are the things they do. Or they have to design a structure, or they have to check a design and they find that it's impossible to do that work according to that design. They come up with a solution and they give the design to the consultants or the person in authority. It's the same with your municipalities where people are checking designs of consultants. They look at it and they see something is not right. You don't just use your checklist, you use your engineering judgment. And you must be able to say why you're changing the design and how you changed it, and this is your best solution. So that's what the designing is. So don't think it's just consultants that are doing design. You're doing designing every day, basically, in your life when you're working on site or you're working in an office doing checking designs in that. Okay, I think I've answered that there, Alison.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is understanding the variables and being able to comment on them. And it's mostly a civil engineering audience tonight, but in mechanical engineering, for instance, they need to order huge plants, huge pieces of equipment from overseas. They're certainly not going to design it from scratch, but they need to go through their design of what they need, compare it with what that equipment spec is, work out, okay, these nozzles aren't the right size, this pressure is not going to give it to me, this is a change, these are the changes that I need in this piece of equipment or the plant before it's manufactured and sent to me. So design reviews are absolutely acceptable all the way. We just need to know you understand all the variables and what it is that you're making decisions upon. Okay, so...
Please, can those who are still here try the test again? The error has been sorted.
So you still haven't made
the test, yeah.
Okay, you still haven't made the draw yet, have you?
No, because it annulled everything. So those who can you please retry the test?
Okay, you can
Posted
carry
the
on
link.
doing, right, everybody, you may carry on doing your test. We have had a response from Tom to say any questions about the HEQSF, the new higher education qualification framework, can be directed to him. But there are a number of questions here. So I think I would rather actually write a bit of a document and send it to you, because there's a huge amount. It could be a half an hour's discussion about in QF7, 8, next step up, how you need to get to MEng to become academically equivalent to PREng. So let us rather somehow circulate a written response to all the questions about the new higher education framework, if we may. What's the next question? Oh, question, Chris, about, Chris is answering about outcome 4. He's writing about it. So, okay, the person about PRT.
I'll answer it, Alison.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll just answer it directly.
Okay.
4.3, that is the one that discusses your relationship, how you do your relationship with your contractors, your clients, and your employer, and your clients. Basically, how he wants more clarification. What documents do you use to ensure the contractor does what he has to be done? You use your contract document, you use your various contract documents that we use in South Africa. You can use certain clauses in that, even the signed contract document. That is how you control the people, how what they say. Because if you look what I said there, how you establish and maintain a professional and business relationship with your clients, contractors, and consultants. There you use your contract document. You use, for instance, your GCC between the consultant or the RE and the contractor, even the employer's agent, or the employer, they use the GCC, or the FEDIC, or they use the JBCC. You need to understand, or the NEC. So you need to understand that is what you discuss there under 4.3. Hopefully that answers your question. It's how you maintain a business. It doesn't mean that you have a braai place around the corner and everybody has a nice party and everybody's happy. It doesn't work that way. It's how you maintain your business and professional relationship with the people that you're working with. If you're working with an employer, how do you send him documents to say? You do it via email, or you go and sit with him and you show him the documents and they sign off. How do you go? That's a procedure that you follow. That's what I'm talking about there. Okay.
Okay, lovely. See, there are many more of the questions about upgrading from PR Tech-Eng to PREng. That will all be covered in the HEQSF discussion, because it is about upgrading your academic knowledge as well as motivating that from a problem solving and complexity level you are working at the level. You see, EXA is bound in terms of the International Engineering Alliance and the requirements for the undergraduate studies, requirements for workplace experience to be aligned with standards in all the other countries. So that's why it's a very rigorous process, but we will certainly let you all have a document and you'll see where you fit. Okay, Rachel, I think you've sorted out the TOs, right? Anything else to say on that? Other than that, I think we've more or less covered all the questions. Oh, Tatu, or everybody, when you doing your own personal studies, you spending, are you talking about postgraduate studies, or are you talking about self-study, spending so many hours reading some new code guideline document? Because if it is just about studying on your own, not linked to a postgraduate study, you would just put the hours and what document you studied very earnestly, not just reading half-cast and not concentrating in the RPD form. Anybody else got any other questions? Are we more or less covered? So yeah, please can this webinar be sent through email? I guess we would send a link, wouldn't we, to the YouTube? Is that right, Patty?
Yes, there will be a YouTube on the Joburg, SciC Joburg YouTube channel. It will be posted there.
Okay. All right. Zinat's hand has been up for a long time. I've just come back to the screen to see it. Sorry, Zinat.
Oh, no. It was just a mistake. Sorry about that, Alison.
Okay. How are we doing? Are people redoing the assessment? Have we got to the stage where we're ready to announce the 5 winners of application reviews? Or are we still working on it?
Yes, Lizelle is monitoring it. Yes, people are busy with it.
Okay.
Even the ones that managed to submit before, those were not lost. So they are part
Okay.
of this one.
So we're
she'll
still
give me
gonna
the
draw.
results just now.
All right, we're still going to draw from there. Anybody got any last 1 or 2 questions while we wait for those results? Anyone else? I don't see any more. Oh, there was a question from much earlier on that I don't think we've answered. Please clarify the term specialist knowledge. Does specialist knowledge mean the difference in knowledge between an engineering person versus an non-engineering, or does it refer to additional knowledge in a specific engineering field over and above your engineering peers? Can we answer that one? Because I think that's an important one. People always do struggle with that, and jurisdictional knowledge. We always battle to get our tongues around that. Chris or Rachel, would you like to comment, please? Nobody.
Okay, let me try and tackle that.
Thank you.
All right. As I understand, specialist knowledge is, especially in the engineering term, is, and I can be corrected, but what I believe it is somebody who is a specialist in a certain field of engineering that is, they know exactly what they're doing. It's their field. For instance, we can use an example of Dave Buttricks. He's a specialist in the field of dolomitic material. It's something that you specialize in only in that field, and you become well known for that. Not maybe worldwide, but you become known by your peers as a specialist. That's the way I understand it. I don't know if you agree with me, Alison.
Yeah, I think, look, Rachel also, you know, she's worked in water resources. She's worked in all sorts of areas. It's not just not your university theory. You're actually focusing more and more in an area, and you're becoming almost, if I can put in inverted commas, an expert on it. And that's where you share. You know where to go and find, for instance, the Dolomite Standard. You know the water resources, guidelines, and so on. You know all those things, and it's that specialist space that you know you've learned how to navigate. So share it with us. Rachel, I think you've been all over those places. Maybe you can also comment.
Yeah, I was just trying to get to my response, but I tried to respond to that to say, yes, specialist knowledge, it tends to separate you from non-engineers because of that knowledge that we have. And also, it will also separate you from peers who are engineers in the field, such that a structural engineer will come to a water engineer for guidance on a hydraulic issue or water issue. So you'll be sort of a specialist in that way. So yes, we know they are generalists, but you need to demonstrate that you are now a specialist in a certain field. So yes, for civil engineers, you tend to be able to do roads, water, you know, depending on your experience. But a specialist, you need to indicate, to separate, to say, when you're doing a water project, this is what is required, you know, because you've been doing it over and over. So you tend to gain that specialist knowledge. But I tried to answer it in the comments. Thanks, Alison.
Thanks, Rachel. Actually, I see some questions about, do you prepare the 15-minute presentation per X11 outcomes. Yes, absolutely. But it's 15 minutes in total, hey, not per outcome. So you really, really need to do that. Just one thing on Rachel's slide very early on. There can be a misinterpretation in the small print on the TERs, where it says a total number of 2,000 words. It is not 2,000 words per TER. It's 2,000 words for all of the TERs. And of course, that is not quite enough. So we know that most of the panels say, gosh, you can't actually share your whole range of experience in 2,000 words. So they do tend to allow it to go to 3,000 or 4,000 words, but please don't make each TER 2,000 words, engineers. That is not what the intention was. And technologists, of course, it says to you 430, and technicians, it says 280. So please make sure that you stay there. And I remember Chris saying about, please make sure you go through your applications and check them thoroughly and so on and so forth. The best thing to do when you finish, read it aloud, because our eyes just see the work nicely and they often miss words. You might miss a not, and then the sentence is the exact opposite in meaning. You read that aloud on the very last time, I promise you, you'll get a much better result. So go stand in the corner, stand outside, talk to the dogs, talk to your kids and read this aloud. And then you get the last bit of polishing done. I see that we've now had an announcement there. The winners are, well, Zina, do you want to, as the chair of Joburg, which is your, would you like to announce them, please? They're sitting in the chat.
So thanks, Lizelle. The winners are Midar Shukone, Kamotso Mashika, Glenville Hazenberg, Reginald Tabani, Gundo Mapapule. Congratulations to all of the winners. We will send you an email. If you can we'll send you our email and you can get in touch with us and we can set up a session to go through your submission documents. And we hope that we'll be able to assist you as much as we can. And thanks for your quick answers and congratulations to all the winners.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's wonderful. So we look forward to hearing about 5 registrations from the 5 of you because you're going to get help. Well, that brings us to the end of the evening. I don't see Vishal. Is he here? Vishal was going to, there he is. Pati, got a new name, Vishal. I'll hand over to Vishal, our CEO, who's going to express around a vote of thanks for all the hard work that's gone into it. I'll leave it to you, Vishal, and very nice to see you. Thank you.
So thanks, and thanks for joining the call and allowing me to join your session. I was given the opportunity to sort of give the parting shots. Vote of thanks should be quick. Thanks for joining the call. I think you find it very useful. From the questions, I can see that there's a huge amount of interest, and it's great to see that because we really, really need a lot of professionals in our industry. Just in terms of the parting shot, I'd like to just remind us in terms of summarizing all that we have spoken about today. A lot has been spoken about what we are trying to do. And to give some credence to what we are trying to do is to remind us why we are trying to become professionals. Along your life's journey, you would have went through school, university or technicon or institutions of higher learning, and you would have gained academic experience. And through work, you would have gained work experience. And you would have put that together. And that, once you go through the process of registering with the Engineering Council, you're in effect getting a license to practice engineering and to basically serve the public directly. Now, that is where the Engineering Council places a huge level of trust on the individual in terms of issuing the professional registration in whichever category or form. And so does civil society. So they place a lot of trust and also a lot of hope as it pertains to South Africa in what they expect of us. Now, contrast that with what we are sitting with. The construction sector, in reality, and it's a global phenomenon, not just South African, is the most corrupt sector in the world. Okay, I'm not exaggerating, and that's, you know, that's fact. And I get lambasted a lot when I talk with government in terms of, you know, throwing stones as to who is more corrupt, the public sector or the private sector. But that debate has to stop. And I think the additional lens that you will look at your career once you reach, once you obtain that professional status, is that lens called the code of conduct. And I think that would become, and it's one of the most relevant lenses that we would look at our careers going forward once we have reached that professional status. So I really, you know, almost implore on all of us to make sure that when we do our designs, or we do our management, or we do our planning, we do it without agenda that pertains to self-worth. We are working for civil society in all cases. And they are the ones that trust us to do the right thing. When engineers start to do things that are untoward, in other words, designs that are too heavy, not optimized, construction that takes too long for intentional, you know, for gain in terms of fees, then we are not fulfilling our obligations. And then we are in contravention of the code of conduct. So I really look forward to our engineers that are on their way, I would say youthful engineers in the main, who will need to change the current rhetoric and change the way so civil society and our clients look at our industry, and make it really a rich industry in the sense that it is riddled with huge levels of value, where the trust is restored, where we work together as a collective, knowing that we are building our country for ourselves and our future children and families that will be in this country. And I think that is one of the major driving forces as to why we should stay civil engineers, remain in the profession, write these difficult reports as hard as it may seem, and get through that milestone. Because all I can say is this country really, really needs you, and it needs you to do the best work that you can do. And that is the only way we can start to even, start to achieve our socioeconomic objectives, which in the main have not been achieved for decades already. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Absolutely. Wonderful last words. I encourage you all to go out there, do the best, be the best. And we look forward to seeing you again and also hearing of all those successful registrations. That's it from us this evening. Thank you to everybody who put the effort in tonight. It was a mammoth task. And thank you all for attending. Good night.